The Galactic Coalition had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. 1,000 species lived together under the banner of harmony. They had built great cities on 1,000,000 worlds. They had ended wars. They had created peace. They believed they understood the universe and all its dangers. They were wrong. Ambassador Krelthax stood on the observation deck of his flagship and watched another world die. Nesser 4, a beautiful planet of blue oceans and green forests, was burning. Great pillars of fire rose from its surface, visible even from orbit. 12 billion Valorians had lived there. Now they screamed as the darkness consumed them. The Kathvari had come. No one knew where they came from. 3 years ago, a rift had opened in the empty space between galaxies. It was a tear in reality itself, a wound in the fabric of existence. And from that wound, the demons had poured through like blood from a cut. They were tall, these Kathvari. Each one stood 3 meters high, made of shadow and flame. They had no fixed shape. Their bodies shifted and changed like smoke in the wind. But their eyes were always the same, red, burning, hungry. They fed on fear. They drank terror like water. And they were very, very good at creating both. Krelthax turned away from the viewport. He could not watch anymore. His 3 hearts beat in a painful rhythm as he walked to the command center of his ship. Officers moved around him, their faces showing the same despair he felt. "Status report," he said. His voice was tired. Commander Vethel looked up from her console. She was young for her position, but the war had killed so many senior officers. "The planetary shields have failed, Ambassador. Ground forces report 80% casualties. The Kathvari are harvesting the survivors." Harvesting. Such a clean word for such horror. The Kathvari did not simply kill. They kept their victims alive as long as possible, feeding on their fear until nothing remained but empty shells. "Any response from the Coalition fleet?" Krelthax asked. "The Silthene Armada is still 3 days away. The Construct Legions have been destroyed at the Caraxes Nebula. We are alone, Ambassador." Alone. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Krelthax had seen so much death in these 3 years. He had watched the proud Valorian Empire lose half its territory. He had seen the Silthene, those master strategists, outmaneuvered at every turn. He had witnessed the Construct Legions, millions of warrior machines, torn apart like toys. Nothing worked. Plasma weapons burned hot enough to melt steel, but the Kathvari simply reformed their bodies. Nuclear weapons could destroy cities, but the demons emerged from the craters laughing. The Coalition had tried negotiation, but the Kathvari did not want resources or territory. They wanted only one thing: fear. Endless, eternal fear. "Ambassador," Bethel said quietly, "what do we do?" Krelthax was silent for a long moment. Then he made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. "Set course for Earth," he said. The command center went quiet. Officers looked at each other with confusion on their faces. "Earth, Ambassador?" Bethel asked. "The human homeworld?" "With respect, sir, the humans are the newest members of the Coalition. They have been spacefaring for less than 300 years. Their military technology is generations behind ours. What could they possibly offer?" Krelthax remembered his first meeting with the humans 20 years ago. He had been a young diplomat then, sent to evaluate this strange new species for membership in the Coalition. The humans had seemed so ordinary. Small bodies, fragile bones, short lifespans. They lived for barely a century, while Valorians could see 500 years. But something about them had troubled him. Something in their eyes. Something in their history. "I have studied the humans," Krelthax said. "I have read their history. They are young, yes, but they are not innocent. They have been fighting and killing each other for 100,000 years. They have created weapons and methods of war that even the Coalition has never imagined. So have many species, Vethel said. War is common in young civilizations. Not like this, Krelthax replied. The humans have a darkness in them, Commander. They have tried to hide it since joining the coalition. They have shown us only their peaceful side. They're artists and scientists and philosophers. But I have seen the other side. I have read about their world wars, their genocides, their instruments of torture. I have studied what they call special operations, and I believe. He paused. I believe they may be the only species in this galaxy that the Kathvari should fear. The ship's engines hummed as they changed course. Behind them, Nesser 4 continued to burn. The journey to Earth took 2 weeks. Krelthax spent that time reviewing everything he knew about humanity. He read about their wars, their weapons, their tactics. He studied their psychology, their culture, their beliefs. And the more he read, the more certain he became. The humans were predators. They hid it well. They had rules and laws and complex moral philosophies. They spoke of peace and cooperation and the brotherhood of all intelligent beings. But beneath that civilized surface, something ancient lurked. Something that had spent 100,000 years learning to hunt and kill in a hostile world. The coalition species had evolved on gentle planets. The Valorians had no natural predators on their homeworld. The Sylphine had developed in warm, peaceful oceans. But Earth was different. Earth was a death world, filled with predators and diseases and natural disasters. And the humans had not merely survived there. They had conquered it. They had conquered everything. When the ship arrived in the Sol system, Krelthax was greeted by a small human delegation. They met on a station orbiting their moon, a place called Armstrong Base. The humans smiled and shook hands and offered refreshments. They seemed so friendly, so harmless. But Krelthax noticed the soldiers standing in the corners. Tall men and women in simple uniforms, their faces calm and expressionless. They did not smile. They did not speak. They simply watched with eyes that reminded Krelthax of hunting animals. He was taken to a meeting room where several human officials waited. Most wore civilian clothes, but one man wore a military uniform. He was old with gray hair and deep lines on his face. His eyes were cold and steady. A small nameplate on his chest read, Morrison. Ambassador Krelthax, the old soldier said. Welcome to Earth. I am General William Morrison, Commander of United Earth Special Operations Command. We have been watching the war with great concern. Then you know why I am here, Krelthax said. We can guess. The coalition is losing badly, and you need help. Yes. Krelthax felt a wave of shame. His proud civilization reduced to begging the youngest member species for aid. We need your warriors, General. We need your best. The humans in the room exchanged glances. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked excited. But General Morrison simply stared at the ambassador with those cold eyes. You don't want our best, he said quietly. Krelthax blinked. I'm sorry? Our best, Morrison repeated. You don't want them. Trust me on this, Ambassador. Our regular military forces can provide support. We have some excellent conventional units. But our best? No, they're not meant for wars like yours. They're not meant for any war that decent beings should fight. General, I have watched 12 billion of my people die. I have seen worlds burned and civilizations ended. The Kathvari cannot be stopped by conventional forces. We need everything you have. Morrison was silent for a long moment. Then he leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Ambassador, let me tell you about the people you're asking for. We call them Tier 1 operators. Special mission units. They go by many names. Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Delta Force, SAS, Spetsnaz, but the ones at the very top, the ones we keep in the deepest black sites, the ones whose names have been erased from every record. Those are different. Different how? They are monsters. Morrison said the words simply, without emotion. We took the most dangerous humans on Earth and made them more dangerous. We broke them down and rebuilt them into weapons. They can kill in 1,000 ways. They can survive anywhere. They feel no fear. They show no mercy. And they are very, very good at making other beings suffer. Kralthax felt a chill run down his spine, despite the comfortable temperature of the room. We keep them leashed, Morrison continued. We keep them caged. Because if we ever let them loose, if we ever let them truly fight without rules or restrictions, I honestly don't know what would happen. I don't know if we could stop them. General, Kralthax said, the Kathvari are demons. They feed on fear. They cannot be killed by normal weapons. They regenerate from any wound. They can read thoughts and sense emotions. What makes you think your operators could fight them? Morrison smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Because our operators don't fight like normal soldiers, Ambassador. They don't meet the enemy in battle. They don't follow rules of engagement. They hunt, they stalk, they terrorize, and then they kill, slowly, painfully, in ways that leave the survivors traumatized. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. The Kathvari feed on fear? Good. Our operators specialize in fear. They have been using psychological warfare for centuries. They know exactly how to break a mind, how to create terror so deep it never heals. The Kathvari think they invented fear? Morrison laughed softly. They're amateurs. They've never met a species that perfected fear as an art form. You're saying your operators can make the demons afraid? I'm saying that by the time our operators are finished, the Kathvari won't just be afraid. They'll be praying to whatever dark gods they worship that they never came through that rift. Kralthax stood in silence, processing what he had heard. Part of him was horrified. The humans were supposed to be the peaceful ones, the friendly newcomers who just wanted to explore the stars. But now he was seeing beneath the mask, and what he saw was terrifying. But another part of him felt something he had not felt in 3 years. Hope. We are out of options, Kralthax said finally. The coalition is dying. The Kathvari will not stop until they have consumed every living being in this galaxy. If your operators can stop them, if there is even a small chance, then I must ask you to unleash them. Morrison turned back to face him. You understand what you're asking? Once we let them off the leash, the things they do, you won't be able to look at humanity the same way again. The galaxy won't be able to look at us the same way. I understand. And you accept the consequences? Kralthax thought of the burning worlds, the screaming billions, the endless darkness consuming everything he loved. Yes, he said. I accept. Morrison nodded slowly. Then he pulled out a small communication device and spoke into it. This is General Morrison, authorization code Omega 77. Activate Protocol Nightmare. I repeat, activate Protocol Nightmare. All Tier 1 assets are to be mobilized immediately. The leash is off. He put the device away and looked at the ambassador with an expression that was almost sad. God help the Kathvari, Morrison said. Because humanity won't. Across Earth, encrypted signals traveled through hidden networks. They reached places that appeared on no map, facilities that officially did not exist. In the frozen wastes of Siberia, a man stopped in the middle of tracking a wolf. He was tall and lean, with scars covering most of his visible skin. He looked at the message on his wrist display and smiled. It was the first time he had smiled in 4 years. In the jungles of South America, a woman put down her machete. She had been cutting her way through dense vegetation for 3 days, hunting something that even the local predators feared. Now she turned around and began walking toward the extraction point. In a maximum security facility deep underground, a cell door opened. The guards stepped back, pressing themselves against the walls. The man inside did not look dangerous. He was of average height, with a forgettable face. But the guards knew what he was capable of. They had read his file. Some of them still had nightmares about it. "Time to go back to work," the man said quietly. His voice was calm and pleasant, like a friendly neighbor. "Where are they sending us?" "Space," one of the guards managed to say. "You're going to space." The man's smile widened. "Wonderful. I've always wanted to visit other worlds." Across the planet, the monsters awakened. They gathered at secret bases, collected their specialized equipment, and prepared for the greatest hunt of their lives. They did not ask questions about the mission. They did not care about politics or galactic affairs. They cared only about one thing: the opportunity to do what they had been created to do. On Armstrong Base, General Morrison watched the ambassador's shuttle depart. Beside him stood Colonel Sarah Chun, his second-in-command. "Do you think they can do it?" Chun asked. "The Kathvari have defeated every force the Coalition has sent against them." "The Coalition fights with rules," Morrison replied. "They have ethics and protocols and moral guidelines. Our operators have none of that. They will do whatever it takes to win, no matter how brutal, no matter how terrible. That's what worries me." Morrison nodded. "It worries me too. But we don't have a choice. If the Kathvari win, they won't stop at the Coalition. Eventually, they'll come for Earth, and I would rather unleash our monsters on them than wait for them to bring their darkness here. What do we tell the public? Nothing. Officially, this operation doesn't exist. The operators don't exist. If we succeed, the galaxy will never know how we did it. And if we fail..." He paused. "If we fail, there won't be anyone left to ask questions." Far away, in the dark spaces between stars, the Kathvari continued their harvest. They moved from world to world, feeding on the terror of billions. They believed themselves invincible. They believed they were the ultimate predators, the apex of evolution. They had never met humans before. Not really. They had seen the small, fragile creatures at the edges of Coalition space. They had dismissed them as weak, unimportant, easy prey for when the greater civilizations had fallen. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The first transport ships carrying the operators left Earth orbit on a cold Tuesday morning. They traveled in silence, these men and women who had been transformed into something beyond human. They did not joke or talk or play games to pass the time. They simply sat in the darkness, thinking about the mission ahead. Master Sergeant Elena Voss was among them. She had been an operator for 15 years. She had done things in those years that would drive a normal person insane. But she was not normal. She had not been normal since the day she was selected for the program at age 19. She remembered that day clearly. The tests, the psychological evaluations, the instructors who looked at her and saw something different, something useful. "You have a gift," they had told her, "a rare ability to disconnect your emotions from your actions, to do terrible things without guilt or hesitation. Most people would call this a disorder. We call it a qualification." They had trained her, broken her, rebuilt her, and now she was one of the most lethal humans alive. She looked around at the others in the transport. 48 operators selected from the various Tier 1 units. Each one was a specialist in death. Together, they represented the collective knowledge of 100,000 years of human warfare. The Kathvari had no idea what was coming, and by the time they understood, it would be far too late. The transport ship moved through space in complete darkness. No running lights, no communication signals, no indication that it existed at all. Inside, 48 operators sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Master Sergeant Elena Voss checked her equipment for the third time. Old habit. The knife at her hip was a custom blade, forged from a metal alloy that could cut through most known materials. She had killed 17 people with that knife. She remembered each one, not with guilt, with professional interest. Across from her sat Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole. He was a large man, heavily muscled, with dark skin and darker eyes. His specialty was explosives. He could build a bomb from almost anything. He could destroy a building without making a sound. He could turn an ordinary object into a weapon of mass destruction. He was also, by all accounts, completely insane. You ever wonder what they look like? Cole asked, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, almost dreamy. The demons, I mean. The briefing showed us pictures. The pictures don't capture the real thing. Does it matter? Voss replied. Guess not. Dead is dead, no matter what shape you are. Chief Warrant Officer Diana Ray sat a few seats away, reading something on her tablet. She was older than most operators, with gray streaks in her dark hair. Her specialty was psychological warfare. She had spent 9 years studying how minds worked, how they could be broken, how fear could be created and amplified until it destroyed a person from the inside. They feed on fear, Reyes said without looking up. That's what the briefings say. They can sense terror. They drink it like we drink water. So? Cole shrugged. We've fought enemies who used fear before. It didn't save them. This is different. These creatures have been feeding on fear for millions of years. Their entire civilization is built around it. They understand terror in ways we can barely imagine. You sound impressed. Reyes finally looked up, and her eyes were cold. I am impressed, but I'm also curious. They've never encountered a species that understands fear as well as they do. They've never met predators who can turn their own weapon against them. Can we? Voss asked. Turn their weapon against them? Reyes smiled. It was not a comforting expression. Every being that can feel fear can also be made to feel fear. It's a simple matter of finding the right triggers. The Kathvari think they're immune because they've never been the prey before. They've always been the hunters. But we're going to teach them what it feels like to be hunted. The ship's intercom crackled to life. All personnel, we are approaching the Coalition Command Station. Prepare for docking in 15 minutes. The operators began gathering their equipment. They moved with a quiet efficiency that spoke of years of training. No wasted motion. No unnecessary sounds. They had learned to become ghosts, invisible and silent until the moment they struck. The Coalition Command Station was called Harmony Prime. It was the largest structure the operators had ever seen. A massive wheel spinning slowly in the darkness between stars. Lights covered its surface. Millions of windows glowing with life. Hundreds of ships moved around it, carrying supplies and personnel. When the human transport docked, a delegation was waiting to greet them. Ambassador Krelthax stood at the front, along with several military officers from various coalition species. The Valorians were tall and thin, with blue skin and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on their faces. They wore elegant uniforms decorated with medals and symbols of rank. They looked at the humans with a mixture of curiosity and hope. The Silthim were shorter, covered in fine scales that shifted color depending on their mood. They were known as the master strategists of the coalition, the ones who planned the great military campaigns. Their scales were currently gray, a sign of deep worry. The construct representatives were not organic beings at all. They were machines, artificial intelligences housed in sleek metallic bodies. They had been created thousands of years ago by a species that had long since gone extinct. Now they served the coalition as soldiers and workers, emotionless and precise. Krulthak stepped forward as the first operators emerged from the transport. He had prepared a speech, a formal welcome appropriate for military allies. But the words died in his throat as he saw them. There were only 48 of them. Just 48. The coalition had sent millions of soldiers against the Kathvari, and they had all failed. What could 48 beings possibly accomplish? But as Krulthax looked at these humans, he felt something strange. The operators did not look impressive. They wore simple black uniforms with no decorations. They carried equipment he did not recognize. Their faces showed no emotion, no expression at all. It was their eyes that disturbed him. He had seen eyes like that before. In the faces of the Kathvari, the eyes of predators, the eyes of beings who existed only to hunt and kill. "Ambassador," said the woman at the front of the group. She was of average height, with short dark hair and a scar running across her left cheek. "I am Master Sergeant Elena Voss. I will be leading this operation." "Welcome to Harmony Prime, Master Sergeant," Krulthax managed to say. "We are grateful for your assistance." "Save your gratitude. We haven't done anything yet." Voss looked around at the coalition officers. "I need to speak with your military commanders immediately. We require all intelligence on the Kathvari. Locations, numbers, behavior patterns, weaknesses. Everything you have. Of course, we have prepared extensive briefings. Not briefings. Raw data. Everything unfiltered. Your analysts have been trying to fight this war with your strategies and your assumptions. We need to see the enemy through our own eyes." A Sylphine officer stepped forward, his scales shifting to an irritated yellow. "Master Sergeant, I am Admiral Sithix, commander of coalition military forces. We have been fighting this war for 3 years. We have developed detailed strategies and tactical approaches. Surely your small team would benefit from our experience." Voss turned to look at him. The Sylphine was twice her height and covered in armored scales. He had commanded fleets of thousands of ships. He had fought battles across dozens of star systems. He took a step back without realizing it. "Admiral," Voss said quietly, "your experience has led to the deaths of billions. Your strategies have failed at every turn. The Kathvari are still advancing. Your coalition is still losing." She paused. "We are not here to follow your lead. We are here to do what we do best. And what we do best is hunt monsters." The Admiral's scales turned dark red with anger. "How dare you speak to me in such a manner? I have won more battles than you have fought. I have commanded forces that would fill your entire planet. And yet here you are, losing to creatures that you cannot understand." Voss stepped closer, looking up at the towering alien without any sign of fear. "We are not soldiers, Admiral. We are specialists, predators. We have been hunting and killing the most dangerous beings on Earth for our entire lives. Trust me when I say that the Kathvari have never faced anything like us." The drop pod hit the ground with a soft thud, perfectly controlled. Voss was out before the dust settled, moving through the darkness like a shadow. Around her, she could sense the other operators landing, spreading out across the ruined city in a precise pattern. Nesser 7 had been beautiful once. The capital city of Valeth Prime had towers that reached into the clouds, connected by bridges of living crystal. Gardens had filled every open space, growing plants that glowed with bioluminescence. Now was a graveyard. The towers were broken, their crystal surfaces dark and dead. The gardens had become tangles of black thorns that seemed to reach for anything that passed. The air smelled of ash and something else, something that reminded Voss of old blood. And everywhere, the Kathvari moved. Voss could see them through her enhanced optics. Tall figures of shadow and flame, patrolling the ruined streets. They moved with arrogant confidence, these demons. They owned this world now. They had nothing to fear. That was about to change. She activated her communication device, sending a single pulse to her team. It meant in position. Similar pulses came back from across the city. All 48 operators were in place, surrounding the Kathvari stronghold like a noose waiting to tighten. The plan was simple. They would not attack directly. They would not try to fight through the demon defenses. Instead, they would hunt. Pick off individual Kathvari one by one. Create fear through mystery. Through horror. Through pain. Voss spotted her first target. A lone Kathvari wandering through an abandoned residential district. It was smaller than most, probably a low-ranking demon sent on patrol duty. Perfect for a first kill. She moved closer, keeping to the shadows. The Kathvari could sense fear and hostile intent, so she emptied her mind. She thought of nothing, felt nothing. She became a void, invisible to the demon's psychic senses. When she was close enough, she struck. Her blade went through the demon's neck before it knew she was there. The creature made a sound like tearing metal as its head separated from its body. Black ichor sprayed across the ground, and the demon collapsed, but it was not dead. The Kathvari began to regenerate immediately, the severed parts trying to reunite. Voss had expected this. She pulled out a specialized incendiary device and attached it to the reforming mass. The fire that erupted was hot enough to melt stone. The demon screamed as it burned, its regeneration unable to keep up with the damage. For long seconds it writhed and shrieked, a sound that echoed through the empty streets. Then there was silence. Voss looked down at the charred remains. The Kathvari would not be regenerating from this. She had killed her first demon. Now came the important part. She dragged what was left of the body to the center of a nearby plaza. She arranged it carefully, positioning the burned remains in a way that would be visible from multiple directions. Then she left a message, carved into the stone beneath the corpse. A single word in the Kathvari language, which coalition linguists had managed to decode. Hunted. Across the city, similar scenes played out. Operators found isolated Kathvari and eliminated them with silent efficiency. Each kill was different, tailored to create maximum psychological impact. Some bodies were hung from buildings. Others were dismembered and scattered. Some were left intact but posed in humiliating positions, stripped of their dignity even in death. And always, there was the message. That single word, hunted. It took 6 hours before the Kathvari realized something was wrong. Hive Lord Zefkan received the first reports with disbelief. Sentries missing. Patrol routes abandoned. When search parties were sent out, they found the bodies. And the messages. Zefkan was an ancient demon, one of the first to cross through the rift. He had existed for millions of years, feeding on the terror of 1,000 species. He had never felt fear. He barely remembered what the concept meant. But as he looked at the images his subordinates brought him, he felt something strange. A cold sensation in the center of his being. Unfamiliar, unpleasant. What is this? He demanded. His lieutenants could not answer. Their psychic senses had detected nothing. No fear, no aggression, no mental signatures of any kind. It was as if the killers did not exist. Find them, Zefkan ordered. Find them and bring them to me. He did not realize how impossible that command would be. The second night was worse. Cole had set up in an abandoned manufacturing district. Surrounded by explosives he had built from materials found in the ruins. When a Kathvari patrol entered his territory, he destroyed them completely. Not one demon escaped, but before they died, Cole made sure they suffered. His explosives were designed to cause maximum pain without killing immediately. The demons screamed for hours as the fire consumed them slowly, giving their fellows plenty of time to hear. Park and her squad took a different approach. They infiltrated a harvesting facility where Valorian prisoners were being kept. They freed the prisoners and set up an ambush. When the Kathvari guards came to investigate, they found their own weapons turned against them. The demons died badly, impaled on their own feeding apparatus. The message carved into the walls was longer this time. "We are coming for you all." Reyes worked alone, targeting the mental aspect of the operation. She had studied Kathvari psychology extensively, and she knew their weaknesses. The demons believed themselves immortal, invincible. The idea of dying was almost incomprehensible to them. So she made sure they understood. She captured a low-ranking demon alive, using techniques that would have horrified any civilized being. Then she began to teach it about mortality, about pain, about the endless dark that waited beyond existence. When she was finished, she released it. The demon fled back to its superiors, babbling in a language that barely made sense anymore. Its mind had been broken, shattered by terrors, and had never imagined it died 2 days later, still screaming. By the end of the first week, 53 Kathvari had been killed. The demons had managed to kill exactly 0 humans. Hive Lord Zefkin called a council of his lieutenants. They gathered in the great hall of what had once been the Valorian government building. The chamber was filled with shadow and flame, the preferred environment of the Kathvari. Cole laughed from somewhere behind her. It was a strange sound in the tense silence. "What she's trying to say, Admiral, is that we're the monsters your monsters have nightmares about. Now, are you going to help us, or are you going to keep measuring tentacles with us?" For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Kralthax stepped between them, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Please," he said. "We are all on the same side here. Admiral Sithx, the humans have been invited by the Coalition Council itself. They have methods that may prove effective against the Kathvari. Master Sergeant Voss, we will provide everything you need. Full access to all intelligence, all resources, all support." Voss nodded. "Good. Then let's get started. Every moment we waste is another moment the Kathvari used to grow stronger." The intelligence briefing took 12 hours. The operators sat in silence, absorbing data that had taken Coalition analysts years to compile. They watched videos of Kathvari attacks. They studied autopsy reports from the few demon bodies that had been recovered. They examined weapon effectiveness tests, casualty reports, survivor testimonies. The Coalition officers expected questions, clarifications, discussions of strategy. Instead, the humans just watched, observed, learned. When the briefing was complete, Voss stood and addressed her team. "Thoughts?" Cole spoke first. "They regenerate, but not instantly. The footage shows it takes them several seconds to reform after major damage. That's a vulnerability. They can read surface thoughts," Reyes added. "But only surface thoughts. They can sense fear and hostility, but they can't access deep memories or complex reasoning. That means we can deceive them if we control our mental state." Another operator, a quiet woman named Lieutenant Sarah Park, raised her hand. "The survivor testimonies are interesting. Several mentioned that the Kathvari seemed confused when victims didn't react with fear. One Valorian reported going into shock during an attack. The Kathvari just stared at him and walked away, because he wasn't giving them what they wanted," Reyes said. "Fear is their food. Without it, they lose interest." "More than that," Voss said. "Without fear, they don't know what to do. Their entire predatory strategy is based on creating terror and feeding on it. If the prey doesn't cooperate, they're lost." She walked to the front of the room, where a holographic map of Coalition space was displayed. Red markers showed Kathvari-occupied territories. There were far too many of them. "The Coalition has been fighting this war all wrong," Voss said. "They've been trying to defeat the Kathvari in open battle. matching force against force. But you can't defeat an enemy that feeds on your fear by facing them directly. Every battle just makes them stronger. So what do? Cole asked. We change the rules. We don't fight them. We hunt them. We make ourselves the predators and them the prey. We take away their advantage and use their own weapon against them. Admiral Sithx, who had been observing from the back of the room, made a sound of disbelief. You are 48 beings. The Kathvari number in the millions. How can you possibly hunt them? Voss smiled. It was the first time the coalition officers had seen any of the operators smile, and it made them deeply uncomfortable. Admiral, do you know how wolves hunt? They don't attack the entire herd. They pick targets. They isolate them. They wear them down over time. They make the prey afraid to sleep, afraid to eat, afraid to exist. And eventually, the prey dies. Not from teeth or claws, but from exhaustion and terror. She turned back to the map. We're going to do the same thing to the Kathvari. We're going to appear where they don't expect us. Kill them in ways they don't understand. Disappear before they can respond. And we're going to keep doing it until they're too afraid to leave their strongholds. They don't feel fear, Sithx insisted. They are fear. Everyone feels fear, Admiral. They just haven't found the right trigger yet. Voss looked at Reyes. Diana, you've been studying their psychology. What do they care about? Reyes stood and walked to the holographic display. The Kathvari have a hierarchical social structure based on the feeding grounds they control. Individual demons gain status by harvesting more fear than their rivals. They compete constantly for territory and victims. So they care about status, Voss said. About power. About their position in the hierarchy. Yes, and there's something else. The Coalition has never managed to kill a Hive Lord. The higher-ranking demons seem to believe they're invincible. They've existed for millions of years without facing a real threat. They have no concept of their own mortality. Voss nodded slowly. Then that's where we start. We find a Hive Lord, we kill it, and we make sure every Kathvari in the galaxy knows how we did it. The plan took shape over the next several days. The operators worked in small groups, each one contributing their specialty. Cole designed explosive devices that could damage Kathvari bodies faster than they could regenerate. Park developed stealth approaches that would mask the operators' thoughts from demon telepathy. Reyes created psychological profiles of key Kathvari targets, identifying vulnerabilities in their seemingly invincible psyches, and Voss oversaw everything, shaping individual pieces into a coherent strategy. The Coalition officers watched with growing unease. They had expected the humans to request reinforcements, to ask for fleet support, to develop plans that involved thousands of ships and millions of soldiers. Instead, the 48 operators planned to assault a Kathvari-held world by themselves. This is suicide, Admiral Sithx told Krelthax privately. They are throwing their lives away. Perhaps, the ambassador replied. But I have studied the humans, Admiral. They do not throw their lives away easily. They are planning something we do not understand, something that our military traditions cannot conceive of. And if they fail? Krelthax was silent for a moment. If they fail, then we are no worse off than before. But if they succeed, he shook his head. I am beginning to believe that success might be worse. Worse? How could their success be worse? Because if these humans can defeat the Kathvari, if they can make demons fear them, then what does that make them? What kind of species can terrify beings made of shadow and flame? He looked out at the stars, where the darkness between them suddenly seemed less empty and more threatening. I asked the humans for help, Admiral, and they answered. But I am beginning to wonder if we truly understood what we were unleashing. On the night before deployment, Voss stood alone in an observation lounge, looking out at the stars. She had not slept in 3 days. She did not need to. The training had stripped away many normal human needs. The door opened behind her, and Reyes walked in. "The team is ready," Reyes said. "Cole has finished the last of the special charges. Park has confirmed the approach vectors. We can launch in 6 hours." "Good." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the distant lights. "Elena," Reyes said quietly, "do you ever wonder what we've become? What they made us into?" "No," Voss replied. "I know exactly what we are. We're weapons. Tools designed for a specific purpose. Wondering about it doesn't change anything. The Coalition sees us as heroes, saviors. They don't understand what we're really going to do on Nesser 7, and they never will. That's the whole point." Voss turned to face her friend. "We do the things that civilized beings can't do. We become the monsters so others don't have to. That's the price of being what we are. Is it worth it?" Voss thought about the question for a long time. "Ask me after the mission," she said finally. "After we see if we can actually make demons afraid." 6 hours later, a single transport ship left Harmony Prime. It carried no markings. It broadcast no signals. It simply slipped away into the darkness between stars and disappeared. The Kathvari on Nesser 7 had no idea it was coming. They would learn soon enough. The transport entered the Nesser system 3 days later, approaching the occupied world from an unexpected angle. The planet hung in space, its surface scarred by the Kathvari invasion. Great towers of dark energy rose from the major cities, feeding points where the demons had established their domains. 12 million Valorians had lived on Nesser 7 before the invasion. Most were dead now. The survivors were kept alive in harvesting facilities, their fear extracted constantly to feed the occupying demons. It was a nightmare world, a planet of suffering. The operators looked at it through the transport's viewports, and they saw only targets. "Drop pods ready," the pilot reported. "Approaching insertion altitude." Voss stood before her team one last time. "You all know the mission. We go in silent. We hit hard. We make them afraid. No mercy, no hesitation, no quarter." She looked at each face in turn. These men and women had been her family for years. They had trained together, fought together, killed together. They were the most dangerous beings on any world, and they were about to prove it to the galaxy. "Demons think they own fear," Voss said. "Let's show them who invented it." The drop pods fell through the atmosphere like silent meteors. 48 humans descended on a world of nightmares. The nightmares were about to learn what real terror looked like. "Report," Zefkan commanded. Lieutenant Vextel stepped forward. She was one of the oldest demons on Nesser 7, with a reputation for cruelty that impressed even her foes. But her voice trembled as she spoke. 53 of our kind have been destroyed, Hive Lord. We have found evidence of the attackers. They are small beings, similar in appearance to the weak creatures we have encountered at the edges of this galaxy. They call themselves humans. Humans. Zefkan had heard the name before. A young species, barely capable of space travel. Unremarkable prey. How many of them are there? Our scouts estimate fewer than 50. The council chamber erupted in sounds of disbelief. Fewer than 50 beings had killed 53 Kathvari? Impossible. The demons outnumbered them hundreds to one. They must be eliminated immediately, said another lieutenant. Send a full assault force. Overwhelm them with numbers. We have tried, Vexthale replied. 3 assault forces have been dispatched. None have returned. We cannot find the humans. They strike without warning and disappear without trace. Our psychic senses detect nothing. It is as if they are empty. Empty? They have no fear, Hive Lord. None at all. Our feeders cannot sense them. They approach like shadows and kill like nightmares. We have never encountered anything like them. Zefkan was silent for a long moment. That cold sensation in his core had grown stronger over the past days. He was beginning to understand what it was. Fear. He was feeling fear. But that was impossible. He was a Hive Lord. He was eternal. The lights went out. Darkness fell across the council chamber like a shroud. The demons could see in the dark, of course. Their eyes were made for shadows. But there was something wrong with this darkness. It was deeper than normal, thicker. It seemed to press against them from all sides. A voice spoke from everywhere and nowhere. Hive Lord Zefkan. The demons spun, searching for the speaker. They could see nothing, sense nothing. You have fed on fear for millions of years. You have built an empire of terror. But you have never understood what fear truly is. A light appeared in the center of the room. Just a small point of illumination, enough to cast shadows across the walls. And in those shadows, figures moved. Human figures. Fear is not just about pain, the voice continued. It's about uncertainty. About knowing that something terrible is coming and being unable to stop it. It's about watching your allies die one by one and realizing that you are next. One of the lieutenants charged toward the nearest shadow. He burst into flames before he took 3 steps. His own hellfire turned against him by some unseen mechanism. He burned for a very long time. You came to this galaxy thinking you were the apex predators, the ultimate horror. But you were wrong. More lights appeared, each one revealing another human. They stood in the corners of the room, on the rafters above, in the doorways behind. They had been there the whole time, invisible to psychic and physical senses alike. The humans of Earth have been killing each other for 100,000 years. We have created horrors that would shatter your minds. We have learned to destroy without mercy, without hesitation, without feeling. We are what your kind never imagined could exist. Voss stepped into the central light. Her face was calm. Her eyes were empty. She held a blade that dripped with black ichor. We are the monsters that hunt monsters. Zefkan tried to flee. He gathered his power, prepared to transform into shadow and escape through the walls. But something held him in place. A field of energy that burned wherever it touched his body. You're not going anywhere, Hive Lord. We've been planning this operation for weeks. Every exit is blocked. Every escape route is trapped. You are going to die in this room, and your death is going to be educational. The other demons attacked. They threw fire and shadow at the humans, unleashed psychic assaults that would have shattered normal minds, transformed into nightmare shapes designed to terrify. The humans did not flinch. They moved through the chaos like dancers, avoiding attacks with impossible grace. They struck with weapons that burned and cut and shattered. They killed with the efficiency of machines, but with a creativity that no machine could match. In less than 5 minutes, every lieutenant was dead. Zefkan remained, held in place by the burning field. Voss approached him slowly, her boots making soft sounds on the stone floor. "Before you die," she said, "I want you to understand something. We are not doing this because we hate you. We are not doing this because of anger or revenge. We are doing this because it is what we were made for. This is our purpose, our function." She raised her blade. "Your kind thought you were demons, but you were only playing at darkness. We are the real thing. And now the galaxy is going to learn what that means." Zefkan died badly. Voss made sure of it. She made sure it took a long time. And she made sure that every Kathvari in the city could sense it through their psychic network. A Hive Lord was dying. A being of immense power, millions of years old, was screaming in agony and terror as small creatures from a backwater planet took him apart piece by piece. The message was clear. No one was safe. When it was finished, Voss stood in the center of the ruined council chamber, surrounded by the bodies of demons. Her uniform was splashed with black ichor. Her face was expressionless. Cole walked up beside her, surveying the carnage. "Think they got the message?" he asked. "They got it. But we need to make sure the rest of the galaxy gets it too." She turned to the remaining operators. "Strip the bodies. Collect trophies. We're going to send them to every Kathvari stronghold in the sector. Let them see what happens when they face humanity." "Is that necessary?" Park asked. "We've already won here. The demons are broken. It's not about this world," Voss replied. "It's about every world. The Kathvari share a collective consciousness. They communicate across distances. By now, every demon in the galaxy knows what happened here. But we need to reinforce the lesson. We need to make them so afraid that they never come back." She looked out at the ruined city, at the fires burning in the distance. "We're not just fighting a war. We're creating a legend. A story that will spread through the Kathvari consciousness for generations. They need to know that humans are not prey. We are not victims. We are the things that hunt in the dark, the nightmares that nightmares fear." Cole nodded slowly. "Then let's give them a story worth telling." Over the next 2 weeks, the operators systematically dismantled the Kathvari presence on Nesser 7. They freed the surviving Valorians from the harvesting facilities. They destroyed every feeding tower. They hunted down every demon, leaving none alive. But they did more than kill. They created art. In the central plaza of Valeth Prime, they built a monument from Kathvari bones. The remains of 50 hive-level demons, arranged in a pattern that spelled out a warning in the demon language. "This is what waits for you. Turn back or die." They recorded everything. Every kill. Every victory. Every moment of demon suffering. The recordings were transmitted on frequencies the Kathvari used for communication. Every demon in the galaxy could watch what happened to their kind when they crossed humanity. And slowly, the response became visible. Kathvari forces on neighboring worlds began to withdraw. Not because they were attacked, but because they were afraid. The demons had never retreated before. They had never known how. But now they were learning. In the deep space between stars, ancient Kathvari minds communicated in frantic whispers. They had existed for millions of years. They had consumed civilizations beyond counting. They had believed themselves eternal. Now they were afraid to sleep. When the operators finally left Nesser 7, the world was free. The surviving Valorians emerged from hiding, blinking in the light of their sun for the first time in months. They looked at the destruction around them, at the monuments of demon bones, at the messages carved in their language. "Thank you," their leader whispered to the departing transport. "You have saved us." But Voss, watching from the viewport, knew the truth. They had not saved anything. They had simply become a greater threat than the one they defeated. The coalition would celebrate their victory. They would call the operators heroes. They would never understand what had really happened on Nesser 7, and perhaps that was for the best. Some truths were too terrible for civilized beings to face. The transport slipped into hyperspace, carrying its cargo of monsters toward the next battlefield. Behind them, the fires of Nesser 7 finally began to die. But the fires of fear were just beginning to spread. Word spread through the Kathvari collective consciousness like poison in blood. From mind to mind, from world to world, from the rift itself to the farthest edges of conquered space, the message traveled. Something was wrong. Hive Lord Zethkan was dead. Not just dead, destroyed, broken, unmade by creatures that should have been food. The last hours of his existence had been broadcast to every Kathvari in existence. A psychic scream of agony and terror that had no end. They had felt him die, slowly, painfully, at the hands of small beings with empty minds and cold eyes. On Nesser 7, the demons were gone. Not retreated, not regrouped, gone. 48 human creatures had done what millions of coalition soldiers could not. They had cleaned a world of Kathvari presence and left behind monuments of bone and fire that the ancient ones stirred in their darkness beyond the rift. These were the true powers of the Kathvari, beings that had existed since before stars had names. They watched through the eyes of their lesser-kin and saw something they had not seen in eons. Defeat. And something else. Something that made them uncomfortable in ways they could not name. Fear. In the great nest of Kothal Prime, the largest Kathvari stronghold in coalition space, a council of hive lords gathered. They came from a dozen conquered worlds, each one a master of terror, each one considered immortal and invincible. Now they huddled together like prey animals, sensing a predator. The humans must be destroyed, said Hive Lord Methvax, the oldest of them. They have killed one of our own. They have insulted our kind. They must be made an example. And how do you propose we do that? Asked another lord. We cannot sense them. We cannot find them. They strike without warning and disappear without trace. 3 war fleets have gone to Nesser 7. None have returned. Then we send more. We have millions of warriors. They have fewer than 50. Numbers will prevail. Numbers? The voice came from the back of the chamber. It belonged to Hive Lord Vexthal, one of the few survivors from Nesser 7. She had escaped to slaughter by pure chance, fleeing through a maintenance tunnel while her fellows burned. I was there. I watched our kind die by the dozens. Numbers mean nothing to these creatures. They do not fight. They hunt, they stalk. They appear from shadows and vanish into darkness. Sending more warriors will only give them more targets. Methvax's S-form flickered with anger. Then, what do you suggest? That we flee? That we abandon our conquests and run from lesser beings? I suggest we understand what we are facing. Vexthal moved to the center of the chamber. The coalition has studied humans extensively. They are a young species, but they have a history unlike any other. They have been killing each other since before they could speak. Their entire evolution has been shaped by violence and survival. So, many species have violent histories. It does not make them threats to us. The humans are different. Their violence is not random. It is organized, systematic. They have developed methods of warfare that the coalition finds horrifying. They have specialists trained from childhood to kill without mercy or feeling. The ones who came to Nesser 7 are among the worst of their kind. She pulled forward collection of data she had gathered before her. Escape, images, recordings, reports. They call themselves special forces, operators. They are selected from the already elite and transformed into something else. Weapons in human form. Their minds have been conditioned to feel no fear, no hesitation, no limits. They are, in the truest sense, predators. The images showed human operators in training, enduring conditions that would break most beings, learning techniques of killing that seemed almost artistic in their cruelty, practicing psychological warfare that made even the Kathvari observers uncomfortable. These are not soldiers, Vexthal continued. Soldiers fight because they are ordered to. These humans fight because it is their nature, their purpose. They exist only to hunt and kill the most dangerous beings they can find. And now they have found us. Methvax stared at the images with something that might have been uncertainty. But they are mortal. They can die. Yes, but so can we. That is what they have proven. We believed ourselves eternal, invincible. They have shown us that we can be killed. And more than that, they have shown us that we can suffer. that we can know pain and terror and the endless darkness of true death. A long silence fell over the council. The Hive Lords looked at each other, searching for comfort that none of them felt. "What would you have us do?" Methvax asked finally. Vexthal's form seemed to shrink slightly. "I do not know. I have never faced an enemy like this. None of us have. The humans have turned our own weapon against us. They have made us feel what we have made others feel for millions of years. Fear? Yes, and it is destroying us from within." She was right. Even as the council met, Kathvari forces across coalition space were unraveling. Demons who had never known doubt were now jumping at shadows. Warriors who had charged into battle without hesitation now hesitated, wondered, worried, what if the humans were watching? What if they were already dead and simply did not know it yet? The operators had killed fewer than 100 Kathvari, but they had done something far more damaging. They had broken the myth of Kathvari invincibility. They had proven that demons could be hunted, could be hurt, could be afraid, and fear, as the Kathvari knew better than anyone, was contagious. On the world of Nesser 12, a Kathvari garrison abandoned its position without orders. They had received word that a human transport had been spotted in the system. The transport was empty. It was a decoy. But the demons did not know that. They fled to the next system, and then the next, spreading panic wherever they went. On Krulfax Prime, the Valorian homeworld, Kathvari forces that had been preparing a final assault suddenly stopped. Their scouts reported human energy signatures in the orbital debris field. The signatures were false, planted by coalition intelligence officers who had learned from the operators' tactics. But the demons did not investigate. They withdrew to defensive positions and stayed there. On the industrial world of Mechanus 7, the Construct Legions achieved their first victory in 2 years. Not because they had grown stronger, but because their Kathvari enemies were distracted. The demons kept looking over their shoulders, expecting human operators to appear at any moment. The machines advanced, and the shadows retreated. The war was turning, not because of new weapons or new strategies, but because of fear, and the humans were just getting started. The operators hit 3 more worlds in the next month. Each attack was different. Each one was designed to maximize psychological impact. They did not try to liberate territory or destroy military assets. They targeted the Kathvari themselves, hunting Hive Lords and high-ranking demons with patient, methodical cruelty. Voss led the assault on Nesser Prime, where Hive Lord Kethal had established a massive harvesting operation. The demon had gathered over 1 billion prisoners from a dozen conquered worlds. He was one of the most powerful Kathvari in existence. He died screaming, alone in his throne room, while his entire army searched for enemies they could not find. Cole took a team to the fortress world of Varath, where the Kathvari had built their greatest military stronghold. Millions of demons guarded walls that were supposed to be impenetrable. Cole and 12 operators walked through those walls like ghosts. They planted explosives in locations that should have been impossible to reach. Then they left. The explosions started 3 days later. They continued for a week, each one destroying something vital. Ammunition supplies, communication centers, command posts. The demons never saw the operators. They never had a chance to fight back. They simply watched their fortress crumble around them. By the time the explosions stopped, the survivors were too afraid to move. Reyes conducted operations of a different kind. She did not kill directly. Instead, she captured demons and broke their minds. She taught them what it meant to be prey. She showed them horrors that made their own. Atrocities look like kindness. Then she released them. These broken demons wandered back to their kind, babbling about things that made no sense. Warnings, prophecies, visions of darkness that had nothing to do with the comfortable shadow that Kathvari called home. They spoke of humans as if they were something more than mortal creatures. Something ancient and terrible and hungry. The healthy Kathvari tried to help their damaged kin. But the madness was contagious. The broken ones infected others with their terror. Whole units began to fall apart, demons turning on each other as paranoia spread. The Kathvari had been an army. Now they were becoming a mob. Back on Harmony Prime, the Coalition watched with growing awe and horror. The war that had seemed hopeless just months ago was suddenly changing. Kathvari forces were retreating on dozens of fronts. Conquered worlds were being abandoned. The demons were running. But the Coalition leaders were not celebrating, because they had begun to understand what the humans were really doing. "This is not warfare," Admiral Sithik said at an emergency council meeting. "This is extermination. The humans are not trying to defeat the Kathvari. They are trying to destroy them completely." Ambassador Krelthax shifted uncomfortably. "Is that not what we wanted? The Kathvari threatened our entire civilization. They needed to be stopped." "Stopped, yes. But look at the reports." Sithix activated a holographic display showing data from the liberated worlds. "The humans are not taking prisoners. They are not negotiating surrenders. They are hunting down every Kathvari they can find and killing them in the most painful ways possible. They are torturing demons for information, and then torturing them more for... what? Entertainment? Practice? The Kathvari tortured billions of our citizens," another council member pointed out. "And that excuse is becoming worse than they are?" Civix's scales had turned a troubled gray. "I have commanded fleets in 100 battles. I have ordered the deaths of millions. But what the humans are doing, it goes beyond warfare, beyond revenge. It is something else entirely. What would you have them do?" Krelthax asked. "Stop? The operators are the only ones who can fight the Kathvari effectively. Without them, we return to losing. I understand that. But we need to consider what happens after the war. The humans will not simply disappear when the demons are defeated. We have unleashed something we cannot control, and eventually we will have to deal with the consequences." The council fell silent. No one had a good answer. On the bridge of the transport ship, Voss reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The war was going well. Better than she had expected. The Kathvari were falling apart faster than she had predicted, their collective consciousness turning against them as fear spread from mind to mind. But there were complications. "The Coalition is getting nervous," Rhea said, reading over her shoulder. "Their leaders are starting to ask questions about our methods. Let them ask. They're not going to do anything about it. They need us too much. For now. But when the war is over, they might decide we're too dangerous to let live." Voss considered this. She had thought about it before, of course. The operators all had. They knew what they were. They knew how the galaxy would see them once the immediate threat was gone. "We'll deal with that when it comes," she said. "Right now, we have more pressing concerns." She pulled up a map of Kathvari-controlled space. The red markers that had covered most of the Coalition territory 3 months ago had shrunk dramatically. The demons were being pushed back on every front. But one marker remained stubbornly large. A region near the original rift where the strongest Kathvari forces had retreated. "They're consolidating," Voss observed, "pulling back to defensible positions. They're trying to create a stronghold we can't crack." "Can we crack it?" "Probably. But it will take time. And they're learning. Each world we hit, they get a little smarter, a little more prepared. Eventually, they'll figure out how to counter us. So, what do? Voss was silent for a long moment. Then she smiled, that cold expression that had made even Coalition admirals step back. "We don't give them time. We hit them now, while they're still scared. We push through their defenses and we find their leaders. All of them. And we kill them all at once. Cole walked over, having overheard the conversation. You're talking about assaulting the core systems. The ones closest to the rift. Those are the most heavily defended positions in Kathvari space. Yes, with 48 operators. Yes, Cole laughed. It was a genuine sound, full of dark amusement. I love it. When do we leave? Tomorrow. But first, we need to send them a message. Something that will make them even more afraid. Something that will keep them looking over their shoulders while we approach. She activated a recording device. Hive Lords of the Kathvari, she began. You have felt our touch. You have seen your kind fall. You have learned what it means to be prey. But you have not yet learned what it means to truly fear. Her voice was calm, pleasant, almost friendly. We are coming for you. Not tomorrow. Not next week. But soon. And when we arrive, there will be no escape. No mercy. No end to your suffering. You will beg for death long before we grant it. She paused, letting the words sink in. You thought you were demons. You were wrong. We are the darkness that darkness fears. We are the nightmare at the end of existence. And we are coming. She ended the recording and transmitted it on every frequency the Kathvari used. In the stronghold near the rift, ancient Hive Lords received the message. They listened to the calm human voice promising horrors they could barely imagine. They felt the fear of their subordinates spreading through the collective consciousness. And for the first time in their eternal existence, they began to understand. They were not the apex predators. They had never been. And now the real monsters were coming to claim their throne. The operators prepared for their final assault. Weapons were checked and rechecked. Plans were reviewed and refined. Each team member knew their role, their target, their purpose. They did not speak of victory or survival. Those concepts had been stripped from them long ago. They spoke only of the hunt, the kill, the satisfaction of becoming the thing that monsters feared. Voss looked at her team, these men and women who had given up their humanity to become weapons. She felt something that might have been pride or might have been sorrow. It was hard to tell anymore. This is what we were made for, she said quietly. This is why we exist. To face the darkness and make it blink. To become the nightmare that ends all nightmares. She picked up her blade, the one that had killed so many demons. Let's go hunting. The transport entered hyperspace, carrying its cargo of killers toward the heart of demon territory. Behind them, the galaxy held its breath. The final battle was about to begin. And the Kathvari, who had believed themselves the ultimate horror, were about to learn what real horror looked like. It looked like 48 humans who felt no fear. And it was coming for them. The rift hung in space like a wound that would not heal. It was a tear in reality, a doorway between dimensions that had brought the Kathvari to this galaxy. Energy pulsed around its edges, casting strange shadows across the nearby stars. For 3 years, the Coalition had tried to close it. They had thrown their greatest weapons at it. Nuclear fire, antimatter bombs, exotic energy beams that could tear apart the fabric of space itself. Nothing worked. The rift remained open, a permanent reminder of the horror that had come through. But now things were different. Around the rift, the last Kathvari forces had gathered. Millions of demons, refugees from a dozen conquered worlds, huddled in defensive formations. They had once spread across the galaxy like a tide of darkness. Now they were cornered, surrounded, waiting for the end they knew was coming. The operators had followed them here. 48. Humans against millions of demons. It should have been impossible. It should have been suicide. But the Kathvari were not thinking about numbers. They were thinking about the message that had echoed through their collective consciousness. The promise of suffering, the certainty of death, the cold, calm voice that had told them exactly what was coming. They believed it. Every word. Voss stood on the bridge of the transport ship, looking at the tactical display. The demon fleet was massive, thousands of ships surrounding the rift in layer after layer of defense. Any normal fleet would need years to break through, but the operators were not a normal fleet. Entry vectors confirmed, Cole reported. We've identified 17 gaps in their sensor coverage. Small, but enough for individual pods. Psychological status? Voss asked. Reyes looked up from her console. They're terrified. The collective consciousness is practically screaming. Most of them want to flee, but they have nowhere to go. The rift is their only escape. Then, we make sure they don't reach it. The plan was simple, as all the best plans were. The operators would insert in small teams, targeting key command ships and high-value individuals. They would spread chaos and death through the demon fleet, destroying the leadership structure that held it together. And then they would push the survivors toward the rift, not to let them escape. To make them beg for escape, to make them understand that they were not running from the galaxy. They were being driven out. Launch in 5 minutes, Voss announced. Final checks. The operators moved through their preparations with the calm efficiency of long practice. Equipment was secured. Mental states were emptied. Each one became a void, invisible to psychic senses, undetectable by any means the Kathvari possessed. They had done this 100 times before. But this time would be different. This time, they would end it. Voss looked at her team one last time. These men and women who had become her family, her fellow monsters. We came to this galaxy to hunt demons, she said. Today, we finished the hunt. No mercy, no hesitation. No survivors unless they flee through that rift and never come back. She paused. It has been an honor to serve with you. Now let's go kill everything that moves. The pods launched in silence, 48 dark shapes dropping into the void. They slipped through the gaps in the sensor net like shadows through cracks in a wall. The demons never saw them coming. The first kill happened 17 minutes later. A Hive Lord on a command ship, surrounded by 100 guards. The guards died first, cut down by weapons they could not see wielded by enemies they could not sense. Then the Hive Lord died, slowly, screaming messages of terror into the collective consciousness. More kills followed. Each one broadcast to every demon in the fleet. Each one a demonstration of complete human dominance. The Kathvari tried to fight back. They launched waves of warriors against the invisible enemy. They fired their weapons at shadows. They turned on each other, suspecting infiltration everywhere. The operators moved through the chaos like fish through water. They killed and killed and killed. Each death adding to the weight of terror pressing down on the demon fleet. In the throne chamber of the largest command vessel, the last of the great Hive Lords gathered. These were the ancients, the beings who had led the invasion of this galaxy. They had existed for millions of years. They had conquered civilizations beyond counting. Now they were watching their empire die. We must retreat, one of them said. The thought pulsed through the collective consciousness, carrying waves of shame and fear. We must return through the rift and seal it behind us. Leave this galaxy and never return. Retreat? Another lord's form flickered with anger. We are the Kathvari. We do not run from prey. Look around you. The First Lord gestured at the displays showing the battle outside. Ships were burning. Commanders were dying. The fleet was coming apart at the seams. The prey has become the predator. We cannot defeat these humans. We cannot even find them. Our only choice is to survive. If we flee, we admit weakness. Every species we have conquered will know that we can be beaten. Our empire will crumble. Our empire is already crumbling. The humans have seen to that. Better to preserve what we can and rebuild than to die here in stubborn pride. The debate continued, but everyone knew how it would end. The Kathvari had never been cowards. They had never known the meaning of defeat. But they were learning now. Fear was an excellent teacher. The vote was nearly unanimous. The Kathvari would withdraw through the rift. They would seal it from the other side. They would never return to this galaxy. The order went out to the fleet. Retreat. Fall back to the rift. Escape while escape was still possible. But the operators were not finished. Voss had anticipated this moment. She had planned for it. As the demon ships began to move toward the rift, the operators shifted their tactics. They stopped killing randomly and started killing deliberately, targeting the ships that tried to flee fastest. The message was clear. You do not get to run. You get to crawl. The withdrawal became a nightmare. Ships that approached the rift too quickly were destroyed. Commanders who ordered retreats were hunted down and killed in front of their crews. The demons learned that escape was possible, but only at a pace the humans allowed, only with sufficient suffering. By the time the first Kathvari ships reached the rift, they had been reduced to crawling wrecks. Their crews were mad with fear, their commanders dead or broken. They fled through the dimensional tier, not as conquerors, but as refugees, and the operators followed them, not through the rift, just to its edge. Just close enough to ensure that every demon who passed through saw them watching. Just close enough to burn the memory of human eyes into Kathvari minds for eternity. Remember this, Voss broadcast on all frequencies. Remember what happened here. Remember what we did to you. And remember what we will do again if you ever return. She watched as the last Kathvari ships disappeared through the rift. Millions of demons, the survivors of an invasion force that had once numbered in the billions. They were going home. And they were carrying stories that would haunt their species forever. The rift pulsed once, twice, and then began to close. The Kathvari were sealing it from the other side, as promised. In moments, the tier in reality that had caused so much destruction was gone, leaving only empty space. The war was over. Humanity had won. The celebration on Harmony Prime lasted for days. Every species in the coalition joined in, filling the great station with music and laughter and the release of 3 years of terror. The Kathvari were gone. The nightmare was over. Ambassador Kralthax stood on a balcony overlooking the main plaza, watching the festivities below. He should have been happy. He should have been dancing with his people, celebrating the victory that had saved his civilization. Instead, he felt only a cold emptiness. Admiral Sithix joined him, his scales a troubled gray. You feel it too, Kralthax said. It was not a question. How could I not? We won the war, but we lost something in the process. What did we lose? Sithix was silent for a long moment. Below them, Valorians and Silthine and Construct celebrated together, united in joy. We lost our innocence, the Admiral said finally. We believed we were the civilized ones, the moral ones. We had rules and ethics and principles. We looked at younger species and saw children who needed guidance. And now? Now we know that one of those children could destroy us all if they chose to. The humans are not what we thought they were. They are not friendly newcomers learning their place in the galaxy. They are predators, barely contained by their own laws. And we just gave them permission to stop pretending. Kralthax nodded slowly. He had known this, of course. He had known it from the moment he asked for human help. But hearing it spoken aloud made it more real. What do we do? He asked. I don't know. Treat them carefully, I suppose. Make sure we never give them a reason to turn their attention to us. And pray to whatever gods we believe in that they stay leashed. And if they don't? Sithix's scales shifted to the deepest gray, almost black. Then we become Nesser 7, all of us. The operators returned to Earth quietly. No parades, no ceremonies, no public acknowledgement of what they had done. They simply disappeared, as they always did, back into the shadows from which they had emerged. Some returned to their black sites, their frozen wastelands, their jungle hideaways. Some returned to prison cells. Some retired, though retirement for an operator was a complicated thing. They never really stopped being what they were. General Morrison met them when they arrived. He looked older than he had 18 months ago. The weight of what he had unleashed showed in every line of his face. "You did well," he told them. "The galaxy is safe because of you. Is it?" Voss asked. "Or did we just become the new threat they need to worry about?" Morrison was silent for a long moment. "Both, probably. But that's not your concern. Your concern was winning the war, and you did that. What happens next is for politicians and diplomats to figure out. And us? What happens to us? The leash goes back on. You return to your assignments. Life continues as before." Voss nodded. She had expected nothing different. They were tools, after all. Weapons to be used and then stored until needed again. But she wondered. The galaxy had seen what humans could do. They had seen the darkness that lived inside her species. How long before someone decided that darkness needed to be controlled? How long before the Coalition sent forces to Earth, trying to eliminate the threat before it could grow? And how would humanity respond? She already knew the answer. They would respond the same way they always had. With violence. With efficiency. With a creativity and destruction that the galaxy had only begun to understand. The Kathvari had been powerful enemies, but they had also been predictable. They fed on fear and sought territory and power. Simple motivations that could be exploited. The Coalition species were different. They were complex, with competing factions and varying interests. Dealing with them would require subtlety. But the operators had subtlety too. It was just usually hidden behind the blood. She looked at Morrison with those empty eyes that had watched so many enemies die. "We'll be ready when you need us again," she said. "We're always ready." Morrison nodded. There was something in his expression that might have been sadness or might have been relief. It was hard to tell. "I know. That's what worries me." Ambassador Krelthax made one final trip to Earth before returning to Valorian space. He found General Morrison on the same balcony where they had first met, watching the same sunset. "It's beautiful," Krelthax said, looking at the colors spreading across the sky. "It is. Hard to believe this planet produced such monsters, isn't it?" "They saved us," the ambassador replied. "Your monsters saved my entire civilization." "They did. And you'll never be able to forget it. Neither will we." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink below the horizon. "I have to ask," Krelthax said finally. "The things your operators did, the methods they used, are those truly necessary? Could you not achieve the same results with less brutality?" Morrison considered the question for a long time. "Probably not," he said. "The brutality is the point. It's what separates operators from normal soldiers. Normal soldiers fight to win. Operators fight to destroy. Not just the enemy's bodies, but their minds, their will, their ability to ever threaten us again. That seems excessive. Maybe, but it works. The Kathvari will never come back. They'll tell stories about us for millions of years. Warning stories. Horror stories. They'll teach their young that there is a species in this galaxy that must never be challenged, never be provoked, never even be looked at too closely." He turned to face the ambassador. "That's what we do. We become the nightmare so effective that nobody dares to dream of threatening us. It's not noble. It's not pretty. but it keeps our people safe. And if someone decides your people are the threat that needs to be contained. Morrison's smile was thin and cold. Then they learned the same lesson the Kathvari learned. We don't do containment. We do extinction. Krelthax felt a chill run through his 3 hearts. He had known the answer before he asked. He had simply needed to hear it. I see. Then I suppose we should all hope that humans and the coalition remain friends. That would be wise, Ambassador. That would be very wise indeed. The ambassador's shuttle departed an hour later. Krelthax watched Earth shrink in the viewport until it was just another star among billions. Such a small world. Such a young species. Such an impossible combination of beauty and horror. He thought about the operators he had met. The empty eyes. The calm voices. The complete absence of anything he would recognize as compassion or mercy. They had saved his people, but they had also shown him something he would never forget. The galaxy was not what he had thought it was. The Kathvari had seemed like the ultimate evil, the final darkness that the light of civilization must stand against. But they had been defeated by beings even darker. Humans, the species that had invented hell before they ever met demons. The coalition would continue. The 1,000 species would rebuild and recover and eventually forget the terror of the Kathvari invasion. They would tell heroic stories about the war, sanitized versions that left out the worst details. But in quiet rooms, in classified briefings, in the nightmares of those who knew the truth, a different story would be remembered. The story of 48 humans who had broken an empire of nightmares. Who had made demons beg for mercy. Who had proven, beyond any doubt, that there was something in this galaxy more terrifying than creatures of shadow and flame. And that something was still out there. Still watching. Still waiting. Ready to hunt again if the need arose. Back on Earth, in a black site that appeared on no map, Alana Voss looked up at the stars through a reinforced window. She felt nothing. She had not felt anything in years. That was the price of being what she was. But somewhere, in the place where her humanity had once lived, something stirred. It might have been satisfaction. It might have been hunger. The demons were gone. But there would be other enemies. There always were. And she would be ready for them. They called themselves the Special Forces. The Operators. The quiet professionals. But the galaxy had learned their true name, extinction, and they had earned every letter.